Today, we're taking a look at Bravely Default 2's own glass cannon job, capable of dishing out loads of damage, but not taking it very well. The Berserker. The Berserker is one big powerhouse, having powerful single target and AoE skills that let them sweep through pretty much any enemy with ease, although they also have one of, if not the worst, showings for defenses in the entire game, making them a fragile yet dangerous member of your team. Let's jump right into their specialties so we can see what we can make of this job. The Berserker's first specialty is Pierce Default, which, as the name suggests, allows the user to bypass their target's default status to hit for full damage. This, of course, helps keep the Berserker's damage from ever being suddenly mitigated without your knowledge or control. Because this job is quite frail and needs to make every single hit count, this specialty couldn't be on a better job. The Berserker's second specialty is Rage and Reason. When under the effect of Berserk, which normally just makes the user uncontrollable and only use conventional attacks, Rage and Reason has a 50% chance of giving control of the user to the player, while keeping the Berserk buffs, which is normally a 50% damage increase, while also suffering a damage taken increase. Now, while the description does say it only activates 50% of the time, in actuality, the Rage and Reason is determined by your luck stat, meaning that with the Phantom's results guaranteed, you can proc this specialty every time for 40 MP. Being able to reap the benefits of the Berserk status while not having to worry about your Berserkers doing something you don't want is a godsend. Though, without results guaranteed, Rage and Reason is just an unfortunate coin flip that might work in your favor, or might just kinda screw you over. The Berserker's special move is Tyrant's Lore, which is a powerful physical attack on all foes. The bonus effect of Tyrant's Lore is a 15% increase to your party's physical defense and aim stats. As with most specialties, you'll be getting Tyrant's Lore frequently, so it's best used as often as possible as a free AoE attack that does tons of damage. Nothing too special about it, but it's still a pretty good move. Now, let's move on to the Berserker's combat abilities, starting with Crescent Moon, Level Slash, and Death's Door. All three of these attacks hit all enemies on screen, spreading out the total damage across all targets hit. Crescent Moon requires 1 BP to use, and is also the weakest of the three, but since it is the first action the Berserker learns, and is one of the earliest ways of dealing AoE physical damage, it does have its place in the earlier stages of the game. Now, Level Slash requires 30% of the user's HP to cast, but in return is significantly stronger than Crescent Moon, or almost any other physical move in the game up at that point. Level Slash can single-handedly sweep through almost any group of enemies in the entire game as long as you pay attention to the user's health, since 3 of these bad boys is enough to drop their HP down to 10% or less. Finally, there is Death's Door, which requires 200 MP to cast, and is another super strong AoE option like Level Slash. However, the key difference is that Death's Door's damage scales the lower the user's current HP is, eventually having one of the highest damage multipliers in the entire game at super low health. If you like risky strats, utilizing Death's Door to completely tear apart normal enemies and bosses alike might just be up your alley. Second up, we have Vent Fury. This ability applies the Berserk status ailment to the user. There isn't anything special about using Vent Fury over being afflicted with Berserk normally, it just means to manually apply it. If you intend to play around with Rage and Reason, this action will be very likely the first thing you do so you can take advantage of the Berserk damage buff ASAP. Do note that if you have any gear pieces or passives that make the user immune to the Berserk status, Vent Fury will not activate at all. Keep this in mind. Next up is Double Damage and Amp Strike. These two abilities are powerful single-target attacks that act as the Berserker's main means of fighting bosses or high HP mobs. There isn't too much to say here about either of these attacks, to be honest. Both Double Damage and Amp Strike require a decent amount of MP to cast, but are quite strong to make up for it. Although, you can also just use Level Slash as a replacement for Amp Strike in single-target scenarios if you wish, as they have the same damage multiplier. It just kind of depends on whether or not you want to use HP or MP as your main spending resource. Next is another pairing of moves, with Water Damage and Flood Damage. Real straightforward naming there, guys. As it turns out, these abilities are physical attacks with water properties tied to them, letting the Berserker just have a little bit more elemental coverage. I know, Creative. Both of these moves are fairly strong on their own, but in the rare moments where your target has both a water and an axe weakness, then all hell will break loose for them. And finally, we have yet another pairing, but these aren't just more damage skills, they're damage and debuff skills. Shell Split and Scale Strip. These abilities deal a weak physical attack to a target and then apply a stacking debuff to said target, with Shell Split lowering physical defense by 5% and Scale Strip lowering magical defense by 5%. These two actions let the Berserkers set themselves or their magical allies up for success in long-winded battles, allowing them to play the role of support in cases where their damage needs time to build or isn't really required. Now we move on to the Berserker's passive abilities, starting with Bloody Minded. When equipped, all attacks made by the user can no longer be evaded, but at the cost of taking 20% of the damage dealt onto themselves. Use this when playing jobs that either lack a decent aim stat, or have moves that might have lower accuracy, like the Monk's Strong Strike. Of course, be sure to have a healer on standby if you get too trigger happy, as while Bloody Minded cannot drop the user's health below 1, that can still be a problem. If you intend to use Death's Door, then Bloody Minded is a surefire way of not only dropping your health down to 1 reliably, but it'll also ramp up your damage with each hit, as you'll be losing HP with every single hit you deal. Second up is Free For All. This passive ability will allow for any ability or conventional attacks while under the Berserk status to be used at no cost. Excellent if you aim to build around the Raging Reed's specialty, as it'll allow for you to pretty much do anything you want while under the Berserk state. The in-game description for this ability is a little off, but know that this can let you get really creative with how you use the Berserk ailment if you were to focus purely on that. Next up is Unshakable Will. This passive will prevent any status ailment that removes agency from the player, such as Sleep, Confuse, or Stop, or hell, even Berserk. This is an incredible passive to run on pretty much any job, as being able to control your characters is obviously a pretty valuable thing, I would assume. Though do note that this passive can prevent the Berserkers themselves from taking advantage of Vent Fury or Rage and Reason. If you aren't interested in using Berserk as a weapon for the Berserker, pop the sucker on so you can avoid any unwanted setbacks in your battle. Next is Indiscriminate Rage. This passive allows for all conventional attacks to attack every enemy at full strength, though at the cost of slowing the user down after performing said attack. This is an excellent passive that continues to allow the Berserker to just rip through regular enemies like a hot knife through butter, but it can also find success on many other jobs, especially the Swordmaster with Solid Stance, allowing your conventional attacks to act twice in one action, as you just cleave all the enemies in twain. Though I would suggest running Counter Savvy from the Ranger if you were to do this, just to avoid any potential counters. Last up for passives is Axe Lore. This passive simply raises the user's axe weapon proficiency to S regardless of what it was previously. This will allow you to reap the benefits of having an S rank on axes regardless of the job the user is currently on. So go have your raving white mage axe maniac fantasy all you like. Now let's take all this information and look at the Berserker as a whole. In reality, there are many ways to play this job, since you can decide to lean more into the Berserk status and build around the high risk reward aspect of that, or fit more into playing a traditional attacker that hits hard and reliably. So when we look at sub-jobs to give the Berserker, we don't really have a shortage of options. The Vanguard is an excellent choice thanks to its 2 passives and extra attack options. Being able to equip shields with no extra downsides not only helps with the Berserker's already low speed stat, but it can provide much needed defenses to the job as well. Attention Seeker is one of the easiest ways of maxing out the Berserker's damage output, making this combo quite successful even early on. If you wish to put in the work, the Beastmaster is also an incredible pick for the Berserker, as it is with pretty much every other job. The stat bonuses from this job alone are enough to mitigate almost any major problem the Berserker has, or had. Although this may not be seen as interesting to some, as it's just kind of a catch-all, buff all of your stats job that might not be super engaging. A personal favorite of mine is slotting the Oracle as the Berserker's sub-job, as not only does the Oracle have access to haste, which helps fix the Berserker's slowness issue, but you can also play this combo as sort of a spell blade, imbuing elemental buffs to your axe and exploiting any weaknesses imaginable. With Pierce Default, it becomes much harder for your targets to lower the impact of your hits. And lastly, there is the Phantom, which I've already gone into detail earlier, as this combo is the easiest way to take advantage of Rage and Reason as your main tool in combat. Outside of that, however, the Phantom does provide personal damage buffs and another powerful specialty in the form of Achilles' Heel. Again, there is quite a bit of variety here, so experiment and see what works for you. Overall, while I am personally not a big fan of the Berserker job fantasy, I do have to admit that it is very, very good at what it does. Swinging its axe around, crashing into everything, and dishing out tons of damage at literally any point in the game. The Berserker makes its presence known in combat, as it has access to some of the best physical attacks in the game for dealing with multiple enemies at once. Not only that, but messing around with Vent Fury is pretty fun too, even if its full potential requires a boatload of work to get going, and honestly, it isn't even the maximum potential that the Berserker can't get. It's just unfortunate that Berserker's stats are absolutely terrible for survival or just trying to get a turn in, which can lead to the job not feeling fun to play with under normal circumstances. You can't even play it at all in a normal fight. Because of this, I personally tend to use the Berserker as more of a sub-job than anything else, but hey, if you like the aesthetic of this job, there are plenty of ways to make it work for you, as I've already shown. Now let's discuss the Berserker's fashion. Honestly, this is a job that I don't have too many crazy opinions about. At a glance, I can tell that this is definitely a Berserker job, but with the great giant bear head acting as a hood, which is really, really cool, and the multicolored pelt as the main gear piece, with all of the crazy spikes and doodads covering their legs and chest. I like that each character has their own color scheme on the pelt as well, and if I had to pick a favorite, I think Elvis's purple and black is probably the most striking to me. Overall, a strong selection of outfits that encompasses this job pretty well, if not perfectly, though I definitely wouldn't want to wear it personally. Seems super itchy. A-tier placements for all of them.